The drama surrounding Rico Verhoeven, the man they call the Dutch Hulk, is not just a story of victories inside the ring. It is the chronicle of a relentless climb to the throne of kickboxing, a journey paved with blood, controversy, shattered legends, and the roar of arenas filled with disbelief and awe. His story begins with raw attribute strength that seems almost supernatural, technique honed like the edge of a blade, and punches that sound like thunder cracking through the night. Nature, it seemed, had decided to pour all its ferocity into one man, and that man was Rico Verhoeven. In 2015, the giant from the Netherlands stood across from a Romanian fighter who carried a menacing reputation of his own. Benjamin Adegbuyi, a man so feared and feral that fans nicknamed him the vampire of the ring. He came to Amsterdam hungry, determined to drink the blood of a giant. But as soon as the bell rang, he found that Rico Verhoeven was no host to welcome him, only an executioner prepared to banish him.
Adegbuyi being very economical, but is it too?
Adegbuyi fought with heart, lunging forward with all the stubborn ferocity of a predator. But Verhoeven.com, as stone and ruthless as fire, varied his attacks with precision. High and low, sharp and measured, he dismantled the Romanian with clinical brutality. And then, as if to etch his presence into the legacy of Dutch combat sports, he summoned the spirit of his nation's most famous legend, the Flying Dutchman, and sent his opponent crashing back to Transylvania. Adegbuyi came to taste victory, but all he received were blades of fists and the taste of his own defeat. But glory was never handed to Rico Verhoeven. Long before he ruled the heavyweight division, his path was blocked by one of the most dangerous men the sport had ever seen, Gökhan, the Turkish dynamo whose fists were christened Saki bombs. In 2013, during the semifinals of the Glory tournament, Verhoeven faced the kind of storm that could break lesser men. Saki was fast, explosive, a warrior whose very presence seemed to demand respect. And yet, in that high-stakes battle beneath the bright lights of America, illusions crumbled. For all the fear that Saki carried with him, Verhoeven was immovable. His knees, his fists, his strategy, everything cut through the Turk's aggression, like a blade through silk. But Saki was not prepared to lose honorably. In desperation, he struck low, a vicious foul that nearly robbed Verhoeven not only of victory, but of the very chance to one day have a family. The crowd gasped, the giant writhed in agony, and for a moment it seemed as though the Dutchman's rise would be halted by a cruel and cowardly blow. Yet champions are not defined by comfort, but by how they endure suffering. Verhoeven rose, shaking off the pain, and what followed was not a fight but a punishment. With merciless precision, he battered Saki until the warrior who once seemed untouchable was reduced to a shadow of himself. When the bell rang, the decision was clear. Verhoeven was on his way to becoming the heavyweight champion of the world. That final step came in the same tournament, where he met Daniel Giga, the wild samurai. Giga was a man with the spirit of a katana, sharp, relentless, and unpredictable. He had promised to finish Verhoeven in the first round, vowing to dismantle the Dutchman before he had a chance to find his rhythm. But promises made in interviews are not the same as truths carved into the ring. Giga stormed forward with fury, but Verhoeven remained unshaken. His fists were sharper than any katana, his strategy more precise than any samurai's blade. Round after round, he dismantled the wild samurai until the judges could not deny the obvious. Rico Verhoeven was the new world heavyweight champion, but victory did not soften him. Instead, it sharpened his hunger. For Verhoeven, wearing the crown was never enough. He wanted to face the men who had carved history before him, the legends who stood like mountains at the top of the sport. One of those mountains was Peter Aerts, a man who had ruled the food chain of kickboxing for 2 decades. In 2013, the 24-year-old Verhoeven squared off against the 43-year-old Titan in Japan, a land where the sport had long been revered. The clash was more than just a fight, it was a passing of the torch, a battle between eras. Aerts came forward, with all the grit of a veteran who had seen and conquered everything, but Verhoeven was merciless. His low kicks were thunderbolts, chopping down the legend with brutal rhythm, each strike announcing that the time of the old guard was nearing its sunset. At the end of the brutal contest, Verhoeven stood victorious, a symbol of the new generation, ready to rule. The years that followed turned into a parade of violence and dominance. One by one, challengers stepped forward. Antonio Bigfoot Silva, from Brazil, a giant who traded the samba of carnival for the brutality of the ring. Daniel Giga, again, who tried once more to topple the Dutch Titan. And a host of men, who believed, if only briefly, that they could crack the code of the king. All of them fell. Verhoeven dismantled Silva with such efficiency that it resembled a hunting exhibition rather than a contest, his kicks breaking down the Brazilian until the referee was forced to intervene. But if there was one rivalry that defined Rico Verhoeven's reign, one saga that turned his career into something larger than sport, it was his war with the Moroccan icon, Badr Hari. Hari was no ordinary fighter, he was a phenomenon, a man whose talent was undeniable but whose arrogance and reckless nature made him both feared and hated. He had humiliated opponents, mocked them, destroyed legends like Alistair Overeem and Peter Aerts, and carried himself like a villain who believed he was untouchable. When he stepped into the ring with Verhoeven in 2016, it felt like a clash of worlds. The disciplined king against the arrogant outlaw. The atmosphere was electric, the tension unbearable. Hari came out swinging with fire in his eyes, hurling bombs at the Dutchman. But Verhoeven was not a statue to be broken. He was a wall that struck back. Blow after blow, the two men exchanged fury, the crowd rising with every strike. But then, in a cruel twist of fate, Hari's body betrayed him. His arm broke mid-fight, the pain forcing him to surrender, and Verhoeven stood victorious. It was not the ending the world expected, but it was a clear message. Even the great Badr Hari could not dethrone the king. 3 years later, Hari returned for revenge. Their rematch was nothing short of legendary. This time, the Moroccan unleashed everything, pouring years of anger and frustration into each punch, each kick. For moments, it seemed as if the tide would turn, that Hari might finally conquer the giant who haunted him. The fight became a war of wills, a chess match of violence where each man tried to outthink and outstrike the other. But then, once again, fate intervened. As Hari launched another devastating assault, his leg shattered, leaving him crumpled in agony. The rivalry was over, and Verhoeven, once again, stood tall as the undeniable king. The Bone Crusher, the king of kickboxing. His reign was more than dominance, it was an era. For years, Verhoeven cleared out the heavyweight division, one challenger after another, falling before his power, his precision, his iron will. He wasn't just winning. He was redefining what it meant to be a heavyweight champion. Outside the ring, his fame stretched to Hollywood, where he appeared alongside stars like Jean-Claude Van Damme, a reminder that his charisma extended far beyond the sport itself. Inside the ring, however, he was all business, a machine designed for one purpose: victory. Rico Verhoeven's legacy is not just built on wins and belts, but on the way he carried himself through storms. He faced dirty tactics, arrogant rivals, broken bodies, and broken promises. He faced legends, villains, and wild men who fought as if the world depended on their victory. And in each battle, he proved that strength is not only in the body but in the spirit. He became the king, not simply by defeating men, but by enduring everything that tried to stop him. Today, when the name Rico Verhoeven is spoken, it echoes like a legend of its own. He is the Dutch Hulk, the Bone Crusher, the Flying Dutchman who carried his nation's legacy into the modern age. And whether in the ring or beyond, his story continues to inspire millions, reminding the world that true greatness is forged in struggle, in blood, and in the unbreakable will to rise every time the world tries to drag you down. So as the saga of Rico Verhoeven continues, one question remains: how long can a king rule before a new challenger rises? And when that day comes, will anyone truly be able to dethrone the Dutch Hulk? Thank you for watching. If you enjoyed this story of Rico Verhoeven, make sure to like this video, subscribe to the channel, and let us know in the comments who do you think was Rico's toughest opponent. And could anyone in today's kickboxing world ever take the crown from him?